says Zelensky, with Trump in power. Will it end in the best way for Ukraine? I'm turning first for guidance to a former strategic communications advisor to Pavlo Klimkin when he was Ukraine's Foreign Affairs Minister, Cormac Smith, and then we'll be catching up with the former British ambassador to Ukraine, Leigh Turner, in just a minute. But first, Cormac, good morning to you.
Oh, Matthew, good morning to you. It's lovely to join you this morning.
I genuinely don't know where to start, so I'm rather hoping you can lead us off on this, on what you think is going on.
It really is tough, isn't it? I've been saying from the start of this year, in fact, in my very first interview on your channel, I said that regardless of who won the American election, that the United States may well be lost as a reliable security partner to Europe, as we have known in previous decades, because the Biden administration ultimately was a huge disappointment, and we saw no evidence whatsoever to suggest that a Kamala Harris administration would be any different. Now, I said in my very first reaction to this, I went on Ukrainian television on the Wednesday morning following when it was obvious that Donald Trump was the president, and I later put out something else. I said there may well be a silver lining to Ukraine in the victory of Donald Trump. And there's 2 points that I'd say about that. The first point is that maybe it makes European leaders finally wake up and realize that Europe needs to stand on our own 2 feet. Now, let's just consider things. Europe is, and this is my back of a fag pack calculation, Europe is about Europe and the UK. So let's forget about Brexit, because the United Kingdom has been consistently one of the greatest supporters of Ukraine and has a very, very important defence role to play at the heart of Europe. Europe and the UK combined have an economic might that is nearly 11 times that of Russia. We have a population, the EU and UK combined, that is 3.5 times the population of Russia. So really, with our advanced technological societies, we should be able to look after ourselves and deter Russia. Unfortunately, Sir Roland Walker, the head of the British Army, said recently that the British Army is not ready to fight, and if it's not ready to deter. So it's not just other European nations and NATO nations who are spending less than 2%, and Britain is currently on 2.3, but I would like to see us get to a minimum of 2.5. So that's my first point. Maybe it will make Europe wake up. Come to Schultz later if you wish. The second point is Donald Trump is notoriously unpredictable. Now, I, like many others, was living in fear of what would happen for Ukraine, which is my cause in a country that I love and where I have friends who have been suffering under those aerial bombardments last night. Trump is notoriously unpredictable, and the last time that Trump met Putin was 2019, when Trump was arguably at his lowest nadir. He was being impeached, and Putin was flying high. Donald Trump, like it or not, has never been more powerful in his entire life than he is now. And as I say, he is unpredictable. He will not end this war in 24 hours. But if he goes in and Putin does not play ball with him, how is Trump likely to react? We know that Trump has a huge ego. So it's beyond my ability to have a crystal ball on that. But what I'm saying is I don't think we can take it for granted that Trump will simply sell out Ukraine. But the more important point is Europe must stand up.
I'm certainly agree with your point, your second point about Europe standing up. I think that is an inevitable consequence of what's going on. Can I ask you, I mean, it's difficult in the light of what you just said, but what do you think Ukraine is going to look like when the war is resolved? I mean, do we assume that Putin is going to end up with territory? Is that if a deal is going to be made, some territory presumably must be ceded to him?
Well, look, I'm maximalist on this, and I do not think that, and for 2 reasons, it is completely unacceptable that any territory, including the Crimean Peninsula, is conceded to Putin. And the question I ask anybody listening in is, who would be prepared to give up a significant chunk, 20% of their country, England, the United Kingdom, the United States of America, for no good reason other than to be allowed to live in the democratic peace that you're entitled to? But far more important, how many millions to the people that are listening in, of your own fellow citizens, would you be willing to abandon to systematic rape, torture, murder, kidnap, and looting, as is happening on a daily basis by Russian soldiers in the nearly 20% of Ukraine that is occupied?
Cormac Smith.
So if we in the West allow that happen, where does that leave our moral authority? That's the real danger.
Fair question. Lovely talking to you, Cormac. Thanks for giving up your time this Sunday morning. Listening to that was Leigh Turner, former British ambassador to Ukraine, 2008-2012. Also author of Lessons in Diplomacy, Politics, Power and Parties. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
First of all, perhaps you might want to respond to anything you just heard Cormac say, and then we can move on to more of your thoughts.
Yeah, Cormac Smith is a very well-informed observer of this situation, and is absolutely right that we're on a knife edge here, waiting to see what exactly President-elect Trump plans to do in Ukraine, and whether or not he's going to persist in this idea of settling the war in 24 hours. In a way, Matthew, this really highlights your point about what does Zelensky mean when he says the war is going to end sooner.
Yes.
And I think what he's talking about really is ending the war in 2025 rather than it dragging on into 2026 or beyond. Remember, this war has already been going on for 3 years so far. So why is he saying that? It's all about Ukraine or Kiev retaining agency and influence against this background of Trump talking about finishing the war in 24 hours. Kiev is really worried that Trump wants to pressure Ukraine by cutting off arms supplies to accept a so-called peace deal, which would effectively mean Russia holding on to those parts of Ukraine it's already grabbed. Any deal that lets Russia keep the land it's already invaded and occupied would mean Russia winning this war.
Right.
And that would be an incredibly dangerous outcome, not only for Ukraine, but for the UK and other countries which would face a more aggressive, nuclear-armed, expansionist, imperialist Russia. So Zelensky is talking up the possibility instead that a different peace settlement from what Trump is talking about is still within grasp, with Ukraine negotiating, as your Ukrainian speaker was saying earlier, from a position of strength. You remember just last month, we had Zelensky going around Western capitals talking about Ukraine's victory plan, which would probably involve more long-range missiles and the ability to use them inside Russia, a sustained flow of weapons, an invitation to join NATO, more economic help, and so on. And what Zelensky is still hoping is that that is a realistic opportunity. He wants to keep alive the hope that Trump won't force Ukraine into a humiliating settlement that hands victory to Moscow on a plate, as I say, making Russia actually physically bigger, as well as stronger and more dangerous, both for Ukraine and for the rest of us. But without that big long-term consistent support that Cormac was talking about earlier to Ukraine, Ukraine is going to lose this war.
I'm still, and it's no fault of your own at all, far from it. I'm still confused as to what Zelensky is talking about. And obviously, I don't understand Ukrainian. He appears to be giving the impression I have got is seems to be quite optimistic, and yet most of what you and Cormac have outlined would suggest very little reason for optimism. And that's the bit I'm just trying to unpick why it just sounded optimistic. Just hearing the word the war will end sooner with Trump in itself sounds like a positive message, but when you look around what wraps it doesn't it shouldn't be so positive, surely.
Well, that's the point, really. It's Zelensky maintaining this position of optimism. This could still turn out okay for us. That's what he's saying. He's saying, let's not take it for granted that Trump is going to hand victory to Moscow on a plate. Let's keep open this possibility that Trump will do something more sensible, or that even failing that other countries such as the UK, EU countries could step up their support in the way that Cormac Smith was talking about earlier to make sure that Ukraine has the resources it needs to prevent Russia from winning this war. Zelensky is trying to keep open the window of opportunity for Ukraine rather than Russia to come out of this war with victory.
Leigh Turner, again, thank you for giving up your time this Sunday morning. I found that conversation particularly helpful, following on from Cormac.